Greetings! It is I, Tentis Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my guide on the races of Pathfinder. Now, I'm not talking about those common races like elves and dwarfs and humans. I'm talking about the more unusual ones as we continue to dive deeper into more and more races that you can play, and I can provide you some information about them. Alright, let's talk about a new race for today. The Dhampir. So the Dhampir is, of course, half mortal, half human, and half vampire. Now, the exact origin of them is up for debate. Some say it is the result of a mortal woman having a tryst with a vampire. Others say that a mortal woman, while pregnant, gets bitten. Others say it's just an unholy taint. The fact is that usually the mothers do not survive in order to confess this information, and most Dhampirs are abandoned after their birth. So the truth is hidden. What's known is that they are a race that cannot reproduce themselves, which lends true to being an unholy taint in a way. Now, I don't mean they cannot reproduce. I mean that when a Dhampir has a child, even with another Dhampir, it's a human. They give birth to humans. And now, granted, those humans they give birth to tend to be sorcerers of the undead bloodline, so they do have this connection to death, but they as a race cannot reproduce themselves. Now, because of this unholy taint, they tend to be shunned, looked down upon by mortals, oftentimes feared. They also, being oftentimes either orphans or abandoned by the mothers that birthed them, find themselves alone a lot. Shunned, alone, pushed to the recesses of society. And the fact is, they live a long time. The kind of time that an elf will live. So they have to endure their suffering for much longer than your average human would. This aloneness, this mistrust, this hatred which fills them. Many Dhampir turn to the dark tendencies of the undead blood within them, the darkness within them, and embrace that. Very few can resist that, and those that do tend to turn against their own bloodlines, seek out their fathers, and wish to rid the world of them, kill them. Dhampirs have a nature that is supernatural, that most can notice. Most can see that they have an aversion to sunlight itself. These things invoke fear, and fear brings this entire cycle. Dhampirs choose companions difficult. When they do choose companions, if they are on the dark or more twisted evil side, they often see them little as more than tools. If they do form bonds, regardless of good or evil, they're always kind of sullen and reserved when it comes to these bonds, these people. They still don't communicate much. Many Dhampir themselves, because of their mistrust of others, because of how they've been treated, make it hard to find those bonds, and others might suspect that the darker nature within them will eventually overcome them, and they might seek to become undead, vampires themselves. The fact is that many relationships with Dhampir tend to be ill-fated. Almost all of them do. Now, Dhampirs are striking beings. They are seemingly a lot like a human. They look just like them. Slightly taller, but much better looking than a human in general. So they are very attractive. They do have a paler complexion, especially when you see it in the sunlight. Even those of darker or tanner skin will find that they have the complexion of maybe more like a bruise then in the sunlight. So they always seem to manage that ghastly pallor of the dead. Many Dhampir can, generally speaking, pass for humans. It's just that over close proximity you can start to pick up on the little hints that they are not human, that they are something else indeed. They all have fangs. Now, these fangs aren't as pronounced as their vampiric fathers, but still, a bite with them will draw blood. And many Dhampir suffer an urge to indulge in sanguine delight, basically to drink blood, and similar. The fact is they don't get any actual extra sustenance other than the blood itself being perhaps something of a sustenance, as it would be for any creature drinking blood. But they have that urge to do so that fills them. Now, when it comes to Dhampirs, because they are so rare and individualistic, They do not have a society of their own. Each one of their individual Dhampirs will have a reflection of their own beliefs based upon the society they were raised in. Whether or not they were widely accepted or not, they still reflect their own nature into the society that they were in, even if it's a society that shunned them. When Dhampir do tend to work together, each of them still is out for themselves to a degree. Their cooperation is as far as they need each other. Beyond that, again, each of them breaks down into their own beliefs based on the societies they were raised in. When it comes to alignment, of course, yes, the majority of Dhampir are evil, because of not only the vampiric nature, but the way that people treat them. The way that they're treated in societies drives the vast majority of vampirs to evil acts and evil alignments. Even amongst those that resist the call of darkness, of evil itself, rarely do we get anything beyond neutral alignments from them. It's hard for them to grasp onto good because of not only the dark nature within them, but everything that's happened to them in their lives. It's hard for someone to put that above themselves. Now, when it comes to adventuring, it's a natural thing for Dhampirs. They don't have a place in society. They're being driven away from home more than often. So many an orphaned or many a abandoned Dhampir has been left and become an adventurer. It is a very natural thing for the majority of the race itself to do this. Because of their nature and because it might be hard to find someone that would teach them things, they also tend towards very low training classes, such as fighters and rogues. Those are very appealing jobs for them to kind of settle themselves into. Now, when they do form into more studious classes, we do find that they can be wizards, and in this case, they focus necromancy. Because of the nature of their undead nature, their pseudo-undead nature, I should say, and their connections with it, necromancy is something that appeals to them, regardless of what actual alignment they take with that. Another one that does seem to be popular is alchemists, because alchemists manipulate their own bodies. They find it a fascinating thing because of the strangeness and the peculiarities of their own bodies drives them to think that way, to look inner in that case. Should we find some that do turn against their fathers, basically become hunters, the majority of those become inquisitors. Inquisitors don't have the same connotations when it comes to religious class as others, meaning that many of them find it easier to move into when it comes to hunting their undead forefathers. Now let's talk about some of the traits of a Dhampir. They have better dexterity and charisma than your average human, but they lose some of their constitution. Their bodies aren't as healthy because of the undead nature. Now, this same undead nature that pertains to them does give them some resistances. They're more hardy against diseases and mind-affecting effects. Both body and mind are more protected. And when it comes to negative energy drain, getting energy drained, they don't suffer the effects of a negative level, even though they have them. They can still die from negative levels. It's just the actual effects of said negative levels have no real effect on them. They get bonuses to bluff and perception, can use a spell-like ability of detect undead. They can sense other undead around them. They have both dark vision, low light vision. They have a sensitivity to sunlight, which means they get penalties in the bright light. And they have a negative energy affinity. This means that positive energy damages them like it would damage an undead, and negative energy heals them like it would heal an undead, making it difficult to take care of a Dhampir if one is in your party. They normally have something, if they are something like an Inquisitor, they can take care of themselves, though. So there is an advantage to the Dhampir Inquisitor when it comes to a party of adventurers, especially if you're not going an evil party. Now, some alternate racial traits give them the ability to walk out in sunlight. They are born in such a way that sunlight doesn't bother them the same. They have more developed fangs. That's another one that they could have, where they actually have a bite attack. They get some of their vampiric ancestors' ability to charm someone. Some are just particularly better at hunting their own kin, hunting down vampires. And some, because of vampires' connection to some lesser beasts like rats, bats, and wolves, have the ability to communicate with rats, bats, and wolves. Now, they do have a number of their own favored class bonuses, as all of these races do, but I will have to say none stand out in particular for me. If you're building a character that uses some of the abilities of that class as this race, then go ahead and take it. Just that none stand out as particularly exuberantly powerful in my book. Now, similar to Azimir, they actually have alternate racial heritage. There are more than one vampiric beings out there. We're talking about standard vampire when here. There's an alternate trait that you could be of an alternate bloodline of vampires and have unique abilities. If you should take this, then of course, yes. This is another thing that will require GM approval. They'll take a look at it, decide what you're going to be using. It changes the ability score modifiers, the skill modifiers, your spell-like ability, and your weakness. Each of these 4 things changes. Also, once you take one of these alternate racial ones, it allows you to unlock a number of race traits. We're not talking racial traits. We're talking about the special thing traits, which is an alternate option for your characters to use. There's a number of them related to each of these particular Dhampir races that you can take as special traits if your game master is using traits and allowing them. There we go. So let's finish up today with a racial archetype of the Dhampir and the racial feats that we want to talk about. The racial archetype is Chromancer, which is sort of like a necromancer, but deals with blood. They've learned to manipulate their own blood to make their magics more powerful. So it is a wizard archetype, particular for Dhampirs and their blood relation. Now for the actual feats, there is the Blood Drinker feat, which allows you to drink blood with your fangs and gain bonuses from it of a particular type of humanoids of your choice. There are a whole bunch of feats related to Blood Drinker, including giving you the ability to get extra bonuses, drink from corpses instead of living beings, etc., that can enhance your blood drinking abilities if that is what you want to focus on. There's also Life Dominant Soul. Life Dominant Soul doesn't prevent you from taking damage from positive energy that would hurt undead. If someone would channel positive energy that would be healing living creatures, you get half of the benefits of that. Now, from channeling to heal undead, you also get half of the benefits of it. It's just that if someone channels positive energy to damage undead, it still hurts you. It's just that the channel to heal also affects you, just not as well, and you subtract some of your negative energy to heal undead. It does balance out a little bit and does help out a little bit. Natural Charmer allows you to take a 20 on some charisma checks when you normally wouldn't be allowed to take a 20. You still have to have the time to do it. That's an actual pretty powerful one, especially if you're in a situation where you'd be using words. Taking a 20, if you have enough time to do it, means that your diplomacy, your bluffing, are even better than they could have been. The last one I talk about is Unusual Origin. This one just basically gives you a better bite attack. You have to take it at first level, and it actually does better biting in a way than the bite attack you would get from the racial traits, except you get some other benefits from that one that this one doesn't give. This one just gives straight up nya bite, though you can also bleed someone once a day with said bite. The racial one might be better to take with this one just for the other benefits of that. Also, a little bit of your choice on that one. But that's it for today. So, I introduced you to the Dhampir, a race of half-vampires who, many of them fall to the darkness of their father's blood. There are those that fight against it. And they're interesting characters because they are a more difficult to manage character. Healing them is harder than healing any other race that I've talked about so far. Any of the standard races. So you can see that it's a challenge to have one in your party and to deal with it. It also might be a fun challenge, because as these characters are more tragic, they are always tragic figures. That's one of the important things about it. If you want to play a tragic figure, Dhampir's your way to go. They will always be filled with that tragedy in their life that they will encounter, and that maybe you'll be there to help them out. But I hope you're having a great day, and until the next time, I bid you farewell.